monsters list we've been talking about.
Yeah.
This is a control deck with Hero's Downfall, Thoughtseize, Vraska. This is an entirely different animal.
Yeah, the reason Tom moved towards this deck, and if you haven't had the chance to read his article, I would definitely recommend doing so, is because he felt that Rakdos' Return is busted right now and that it's one of the better cards that people just simply are not playing, and I am one to agree, as Rakdos' Return is quite the magic card, my friends. So we'll see what he's able to do. He's off to a nice start here, sitting at 1-0. He's on your left, and Marshall McClarnon is on your right, and we will be underway here momentarily. It looks like Marshall will be on the play, or at least reviewing his hand. And you see Tom sitting there calmly as Marshall's going to start off with a Temple of Enlightenment.
And Afara is a card that I am really inspired to build decks with. I wrote about it in my St. Louis recap. I threw out sort of a little white creature build of blue-white devotion potentially. It's very open-ended. It's basically just asking you to play a blue-white deck with some creatures. So there's a lot of different ways you can build it.
Yeah.
And we're seeing players, I believe, start to scratch the surface of what this card's capable of doing. We saw it in an Esper control list, just alongside Obsidat and Elspeth, which was enough to fuel it.
Thoughtseize is going to give Tom a good idea of what he's playing against. You see a Frostburn Weird, a Rapid Hybridization, 2 copies of Attention Sphere, and a Night Veil Spectre hanging out in Marshall's hand.
So this is a hand that's fairly susceptible to just some removal spells and a big threat.
Tom says, all right, get your Frostburn Weird out of here. I don't want to be underneath any pressure to start this game.
And this shows really Tom's role in the matchup. Frostburn Weird in a lot of ways is objectively the least powerful card in Marshall's hand, but Tom is just trying to set up a long game here.
Carry it here from Ross.
Just doesn't want to be under the gun.
Not at all. He's got a little bit of mana acceleration. Oh, for the days of Farseek, as Marshall McClarnon does miss his 3rd land drop here. Ross does draw a copy of Magari Charm, which is in his main deck, and now here's a Desecration Demon, and that card does a nice job of threatening to get the game over with immediately. There's a Deputy of Equittals. McClarnon take a draw here. Doesn't look like we have a 3rd land. You see Ross is going to take a look at Deputy of Equittals. We'll do the same here in the booth.
Former Dragon's Maze draft all-star turned potential constructed
Did we call that an all-star?
It was I thought it was very good.
Okay, all right. I didn't play a ton of that format, so. Desecration Demon Trigger is going to be placed on the stack here by Ross. Says, can I get you for 6? And McClarnon says, you know what? How about a 3-3 instead?
It's a good trick, and it's also, of course, very sweet with Afara, which is a nice synergy.
Accurate.
Get to play a creature on your opponent's turn to trigger it. You get to bring a creature back to your hand to recast the trigger Afara again, so.
Plus, it's got great artwork.
Great artwork.
Which is much more important than anything you just said. So we're going to see another carrot sit here. We'll have a Frog Lizard out there in a moment, a Stomping Ground, and now I'm sure McClarnon has an idea of what he's playing against, since he does see all the colors of mana out there. McClarnon does draw his 3rd land. He's got 2 copies of Attention Sphere, and there's a Spectre. So Spectre's going to come into play. I think he's got another copy of Rapid Hybridization in his hand, as well as Ross is going to draw a card. He draws another land here. There's a Temple of Malice, so he's going to take a look at the top card. Might see Night Veil Spectre hit here in a minute, too. I'm not sure if Ross has a removal spell. He's got a Hero's Downfall.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's all right. He says, how about serve for 3? It's going to be good to go. McClarnon going to go down to 17. I think Ross actually has to consider main phasing this Hero's Downfall, too, simply because of a card like Deputy of Equittals and the Night Veil Spectre.
Yeah, at this point he's shown Rapid Hybridization and Deputy of Equittals. There's, it's really tough to get tricky here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of incentive to just cast stuff while Marshall is tapped out.
All right, McClarnon going to come across. There is the Hero's Downfall. Let's see if this ends up hurting Ross at all.
Yeah, this is asking for. I do not like this line from Tom very much. That was potentially asking for something pretty bad to happen.
Well, there's a Thassa to replace the Spectre. So Devotion Check is at 2 right now. 1 from the Thassa, 1 from the Deputy. Tom draws his card, immediately serves in for 3. Let's see if he's got a follow-up play to make. Got an Abrupt Decay in the hand. Still has that Charm. Going to play it over on some tap and pass the turn back. So there's two spells there on Ross's side. So McClarnon's going to take a look at the top part of his deck. It's a little scry time here for him. And don't forget, in his hand right now, he does have 2 copies of Detention Sphere, among other things. He's going to put that card to the bottom and draw a new one. And that is going to be a Yev Sky Knight. So, Frog Lizard, you will not attack next turn. And Devotion slowly building here, Patrick.
Yeah.
There's a Temple of Abandon for Ross. He keeps that card on top very, very quickly. So it looks like he's found something that he's happy with. Again, Ross's hand right now is Abrupt Decay and Golgari Charm.
And it's very hard to beat Thassa with just one-for-one removal spells, because the quality of your opponent's draws go up so high over the course of the game that, you know, you really need to be pressuring Marshall here. Can't let the game go on for very much longer.
See top card go to the bottom there for McClarnon. In for 3 we go. Ross could kill that, excuse me, but he's going to use his life total as a resource. Going to go down to 15.
Yeah, he may be trying to just squeeze more value out of this Golgari Charm.
Well, there's D-Sphere, so bye-bye Frog Lizard. Devotion up to 4 now, as Ross is going to draw his card. Let's see what he kept on top, because he kept it up there very fast. There's a Courser, okay. There's a Temple of Malice, as that's going to come into play. It's time to scry. He's going to gain a life as well. Overgrown Tomb, yeah, I think that's going to the bottom. So let's see what this draw will be for next turn. Hello. Yeah, good Magic card. Rakdos' Return will be Ross's draw step next turn. And McClarnon, he knows that.
Yes, and this is potentially the swing that Ross needs, where he can use his removal spells to kill what Marshall has, sweep up the rest of his hand, deal a bunch of damage to Marshall, and then start attacking.
Yeah. Top card going to go to the bottom here yet again for McClarnon. Does have an island in the grip now. 1 Detention Sphere left as far as cards that we know. There goes the island as well, and now there's a Master of Waves. And you said about getting value.
Just trying to squeeze a little bit more out of that Golgari Charm.
Just a touch.
We found it.
So you're going to see the count here for Master. It will be 5 elementals that will come into play, and in a moment, 5 elementals that will wash away. As Thas is coming in. Here comes Yev Sky Knight as well. Tom says, how about -1/-1 to everything? And that Thas will be removed from combat due to devotion check.
That's a good Golgari Charm.
Yeah, that's a nice card. A good answer. As now there's a Desecration Demon on the top. I think we might see the big fireball here.
Yeah.
See, Tom is going to consider his options this turn first. Doesn't want to get too hasty. You know, does he want to leave up Abrupt Decay or not? Certainly something to consider at this point.
I'm a big fan of firing it off for the max.
Yeah, the max right now, and I think that's what we're going to see. Okay, so it's not going to be the max. It's going to be for 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be for 6, it looks like. So obviously the entire hand is gone. There's a Master Always a Rapid, and that Detention Sphere that we knew about, that's gone. And now here comes the Courser as well. So McClarnon's going to go down to 6. A little surprised not to see him go for it all there. But it looks like it's very important to him to keep up Abrupt Decay. And have blockers, obviously, with the Caryatids and things of that nature.
I guess if he knows he's drawing Desecration Demon, if that Rakdos Return gets Marshall to 6, then the demon is lethal, so it's reasonable to hold up Abrupt Decay as insurance.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Here comes Courser. Deputy going to jump in front. McClarnon going to take a look at the top card. He's going to put it to the bottom. And he's going to need a good one. Let's see what he found. Why do I think that's a land? It is. He's going to concede the game. So Thomas Ross does win game number 1 against Marshall McClarnon. He stumbled a little bit out of the gate to the Blue-White Devotion player, and Tom was able to capitalize on that off of a very large Rakdos' Return.
Yeah, critical Thoughtseize from Tom on the opening turn to take the 1/2 mana play that Marshall had. Marshall had a lot of removal in it, which is not great against Ross. He needs to be more aggressive. And missed his 3rd land drop as well, would send him back, and that gave Thomas the time to sort of set up his shop.
We're going to look at the sideboards here. We'll start with McClarnon, which I know you have in front of you, as he'll be on the play for game 2.
4 copies of Tidebinder Mage, 3 Pacifism, 2 Gainsay, 2 Negate, 2 God's Willing, a Revoke Existence, and an Aetherling. I think that he's going to want the Negates, and I think that he's going to want the God's Willings. He's seen a lot of expensive removal spells, so those tricks are pretty efficient there. I think it's natural to want to bring in Tidebinder Mage, although you didn't see a lot of threats in Ross's deck where Tidebinder Mage is excellent. You know, you saw Courser Crufix, which is okay to Tidebinder Mage, but not great. And then you see Sylvan Caryatid, of course you can't target. Desecration Demon, of course you can't target. So for a green-red deck, Ross is actually pretty durable against Tidebinder Mage. He may want the Pacifisms. Pacifism's a pretty reasonable card against Desecration Demon, potentially other large threats in Ross's deck. And if he feels that the game is going to go super long and grindy, he may want the Aetherling, though seeing Rakdos Return in the opposing deck would make me loath to want to bring in a 6-mana spell.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go too much longer. As we take a look here at Ross's sideboard, another copy of Golgari Charm, which he has not 1, not 2. He's got 3 of that card main deck. Now, that card is good right now. 3 is a lot.
3 is a lot, but you see a lot of enchantments in some of the best decks, and there are a lot of one-touch creatures floating around as well.
I mean, it lines up appropriate here because Detention Sphere and Master of Waves are probably 2 of the 3 best cards in Marshall's deck.
Right.
So this ends up working out beautifully for Ross. A Singleton Mutavault, so he can add a little bit more mana to his deck. 2 copies of Amazing Mortar, 2 Doomblades, a Thoughtseize, another copy of Rakdos' Return, 2 Lifebane Zombies, 200 World Connections, and 3 copies of Dark Betrayal. So a lot of removal hanging out in the sideboard. He can tailor his deck to what we saw Jund decks from last season do, which is, they were kind of hedging against everything game 1, and then they would take out their bad cards, side in some really high impact good cards, and really have a good matchup post sideboard against everybody.
Yeah, that's a very stereotypical control route. You have to have some amount of inefficiency woven into your deck because you're trying to fight 4 or 5 decks. But in the post-board games, you can be much more surgical.
So I expect to see, a card like Doomblade come in, of course. Lifebane Zombie could potentially come in because that's something that we saw him do in the finals of Grand Prix Albuquerque against Pardee, where, the fact that it doesn't take a card isn't that big of a deal because it's a clock, but it can actually hit a few cards in this matchup, like Afara. So, there's that can come up. But, what really makes things difficult here for McClarnon is that, his best cards aren't going to be good against Ross. When you think of Mono Blue Devotion or Blue White Devotion or what have you, you think about Thassa, which is always going to be pretty good. But you think about D-Sphere and Master Waves, there's no way Master Waves is living in this matchup.
Yeah, a lot of Marshall's payoff cards, both for his Blue Devotion base and by splashing 4 white, are not very good here.
Yeah. Now, one thing that he can do, and I think it's going to be pretty crucial for him, is that, Afara will allow him to stay in this game, as far as just a card drawing engine, because I think he's going to need one, given what Ross is doing on his side of the table. He's got a lot of removal. He's got very efficient threats. He's got a lot of answers to Master Wave. So I think, if you're Marshall, your goal is maybe to just find an Afara, draw as many cards as you can, and just, let those 1-for-1 trades actually be in your favor because you get to draw more cards than Ross does.
Yeah, that is definitely a solid game plan. Afara gives him a way to win a grindier game, but otherwise he's not really well suited to go long against Ross's all removal deck with all of his high impact threats. So Marshall either needs to play a very short game where he tries to win quickly, hopefully backed up by Thassa, or potentially win a long game involving Afara and a lot of creatures. I do expect Ross to go to those Lifebane Zombies. You saw Deputy of Acquittals, you have Sky Knight. He saw enough white creatures, I think, to safely bring it in, even if, he wasn't planning on bringing in just as a 3-power Intimidate creature, which we've seen some black players do against Blue Devotion decks.
So both players are going to finish shuffling up here, and then we're going to be good to go. Do want to thank you guys, of course, for joining us here in Atlanta. Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, Open Series here in the South.
Yep.
The home of Chick-fil-A and the Waffle House.
A lot of delicious dining.
I can't wait.
I went to a dining establishment last night called The Vortex, had a really good meal. So
The Vortex?
Yeah.
What'd you have?
A cheeseburger.
You are the most plain individual.
I had fried
ever.
pickles. Wow,
way to really just take a leap
I
there.
brought in my horizons, man.
All right, I appreciate that. I do. I visited the local Carrabba's. As you know, I'm a very big fan of that
You are a Carrabba's fan.
I love chain Italian, my friend. It really just gets me going. And they don't have those in Seattle, so it was just as good as you think it was.
Because Seattle has real dining options.
They do.
You can't find a Carrabba's.
They do. You see a Temple of Enlightenment here to start for Marshall. Ross is going to play a Golgari Guildgate and pass the turn back here as McClarnon does just have an island. No 2-drop to get the devotion party started. As Ross is going to see, all right, well then what's going on over there? Let me cast the Thoughtseize. There's negate. So McClarnon says, actually, you don't get to see what's going on.
I like Marshall bringing in the negates here. There's a lot of really expensive, really powerful spells in Ross's deck.
See, Ross is figuring out what land he wants to play. He's got a Blood Crypt in his hand right now, some other options as well. So we'll see. And he's going to go with Overgrown Tomb, pass the turn back. So doesn't want red mana just yet. Might have to shock himself to get it. As McClarnon's going to draw a card. Thassa would be big here. It's a Nightfell Spectre, certainly okay. But that one might just be dead on arrival.
Yeah. Ross's deck flushed with answers to a card like Nightfell Spectre.
See, Ross has got some lands in his hand. He's going to play Mutavault. Might see a Courser come down. Might just see a removal spell in the main. But he is going to play Courser of Crewfix. Turn on the top card. There's a removal spell in Hero's Downfall. One of many,
yeah,
Mr. McClarnon.
But he's not going to get to draw that one, it looks like.
So, McClarnon's going to take a draw step here. As you mentioned, Nightfall Spectre will give the Hero's Downfall over to Marshall. And, of course, 2 damage will be dealt as well. Ha-ha! Take that.
Another removal spell.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. Abrupt Decay, the card revealed to Courser, and that will be Tom's draw step for the next turn.
If Jund decks are good at anything in Magic, it's typically killing creatures.
You have Sky Knight will come in, shut down the Courser, and pass the turn back. So McClarnon did not play a land for the turn. Ross is going to, he wants to play that land off the top, and he will. So he's going to go up to 19. We'll see the top card from him in just a moment. It's a Temple of Abandon. He's got the Abrupt Decay in the grip. Don't forget, Courser cannot attack this turn because it is detained.
But detain does not stop Courser's static powers from operating.
Correct.
So can't attack or block, but you can still play lands off the top. You can still gain a life off of playing lands.
Sylvan Carriage going to come into play here for Ross. Going to give him access to that red mana without having to take 2 damage if he wants to take that route, as he does pass the turn back with Abrupt Decay up. Also access to Bulgarian Charm if he has one of those in his hand. There is Abrupt Decay. Get that Nightveil Spectre out of here, maybe? And this is what we were a little worried about.
Yeah, I think that once you reveal the Temple there, which is a card that you don't really want Marshall hitting off of the Nightveil Spectre, that you should just go ahead and use your Abrupt Decay on your own turn there. Because Marshall has shown a plethora of tricks for instant speed removal.
I mean, at that point, it could be a counter spell. It could be a card like Deputy of Quiddles. It could be Rapid Irization on my own creature. There are a lot of different things he could have.
Yeah.
You see Ross going to play Temple of Malice, puts the top card to the bottom. Now he's going to send in with the Courser. So McClarnon's going to go down to 18. The follow-up play is Desecration Demon, or as Michael Jacob calls it, Double D.
And Desecration Demon is quite good, in my opinion, against Blue Devotion decks for the most part. Now, Marshall does have Detention Sphere in his list, so that takes out some of its sting, but I've seen a lot of Blue Devotion lists just lose to early removal into a Desecration Demon. It's a pretty good game plan.
There's Nightveil Spectre. So that is redeployed. You check the devotion count right now, too. If Afara or Thassa were to show up, they'd both be live. So that's definitely a step in the right direction. McClarnon having a little bit of issues with lands right now, though. And we saw this last game as well. As a player who's playing 24 lands in his deck, a little bit surprising to see.
Yeah. Has missed his 4th land drop here, missed his 3rd land drop in the previous game.
Here's Downfall on top of Ross's deck right now. And, you know, this is kind of a game where, you know, it's kind of strange, right? As you can see, Desecration Demon, trigger, sacrifice the Deputy of Quiddles to make sure it can't attack, where it doesn't feel like Courser is dominating this game because it's not this big splashy effect like maybe a Jace the Mind Sculptor or something of nature, but, you know, it might be the card that's winning the game here for Ross.
Yeah, I mentioned this. I think this card represents a pretty big shift in the way that these sort of decks can approach the Blue Devotion matchup.
It's just not overwhelming, but the fact that you are guaranteeing, or basically guaranteeing that you're going to draw something nice, and even though you're giving your opponent some information, well, if they can't beat the information that you're giving them, it doesn't really matter. As you see, the flyers are going to come across here. Hero's Downfall is going to go over to McClarnon yet again.
And the fact that the top of Tom's deck is public information is really making for a curious game with these Nightveil Specters.
See Thassa.
Both players are working with a ton of information about what could potentially be happening, both with the Nightveil Spectre and just with Tom's draws in general.
Scavenging Ooze does activate, takes care of the Sky Knight, so Ross is going to gain a life. There's another Scavenging Ooze on top of his deck, of course. The second copy much worse than the first, but the first one is quite good as it's working its way towards dominating this game. Looks like Ross might be moving to his attack step here in a moment. Don't forget, though, Patrick, Thassa is alive and ready to go.
Yep. And I don't know, Ross's hand looks very land heavy from where I'm sitting here.
It feels like he needed one of those Hero's Downfalls just to, you know, contain Nightveil Spectre, and then as a result, he would be good to go.
And again, you know, we don't know Marshall's hand, but it's possible that Nightveil Spectre is the one that was returned through Deputy of Quiddles.
Yeah. Could have a backup copy in his hand, of course. As Desecration Demon trigger has been placed under the stack, we'll see if attacking is good to go. And the answer is yes, as Ross is going to activate Mutavault and get in with everyone. So Thassa, you're allowed to block if you want. The question is, what do you want to block? That's Tom getting very aggressive here. So Thassa's going to get in front of Courser. This is going to be attack for 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That Ooze, you guys can't see the counter on it at home, but it is a 3-3. So Courser's going to go to the bin. Ross is going to play Golgari Guildgate and just simply pass the turn back, knowing that he's going to draw Scavenging Ooze, a card that we can't have him turn face down because Courser is not in play.
Now, this is one of the downsides of Courser. We've seen it on camera a few times in the last few weeks. There's a lot of cards that Marshall is potentially really worried about, and he has pretty close to full information about what Tom is drawing and has drawn.
Mm-hmm. This looks like a pacifism.
That is a Tempest Pacifism.
I've never seen that. No kidding. And now it's time to attack here. And actually, I kind of like Ross's play now because I was a little curious. I guess he could have played a Skryland that turn, but chose not to. But it's actually pretty smart because sure, you can have my my Scavenging Ooze that you can't cast, and now you get to draw a Doomblade. So thank you very much, actually. As Ross will draw that Doomblade. So good library manipulation. It's kind of weird because, you know, if you're not used to playing against Nightveil Spectre, maybe you miss that sometimes. As now Ross is going to fire up an attack here. Thassa can't block, activate Scavenging Ooze. This looks like it's going to be an attack here for Xaxes.
Requires some sort of trick.
And that's going to do it. So Thomas Ross, because that top deck Doomblade, where he left Scavenging Ooze on top of his deck, is going to win this match over Marshall McClarnon 2-0. His Jund deck that he has, again, written about on the select side